was always, in a way, the band leader. In the school band I was in, I was the guy that sort of, called rehearsals, brought the songs in, tried to teach everybody what we were doing, which was only early Motown and soul songs. Drums were that was my security blanket, that was my area. And it was when I joined Genesis. I just had no ambition to do anything. The singer was like, I didn't even care if people didn't hear the singer. It was just like, for me, it was what was going on in the music. And it was only because Peter left. And we just literally couldn't find anybody else. And when he left, I did say, could I have a go at this? Because I think I might be able to do this one. And then it worked, and then we went one by one until we'd finished the record, but we still didn't have a singer. And at that point, the rumour now has it, or legend has it in Genesis circles, that my first wife suggested that I do it, and I don't remember that. But I said, I suppose we could contemplate this idea as long as we get a really good drummer, because I don't want to be sort of thinking, oh, God. Because it's a different way of listening to the music if you're not inside it like a drummer is. Anyway, so we got Bill Bruford and we went on and did it.
Phil, in that documentary that went out, you just made a flipped comment at sort of one point. There we go, I'm always number 3.
Well,
so these two are the founder members, write the originals.
Yes.
And then you came into the band later, and you can never change that. So
no, I joined in 1970. 1974 or 5, wasn't it, Peter left? Mm. I still feel like the new singer. And Peter's the real singer. I'm the replacement.
The dep.
I still feel like it. And I think that when I left in 96, the greatest thing that was overlooked, and it's been overlooked, I just thought it was very, very funny, was the press release that these guys put out saying after 30 years or something, we've decided that Phil wasn't the right guy for the job. I thought it was just a great way of looking at it. And when the 5 of us are all together, it's funny how everybody reverts to those roles. I'm the one that makes the jokes. Steve is the very dark one that just murmurs. Yeah. Everyone's got their...
And Tony and Mike?
He's Mr. Grumpy.
Tony and Peter argue again. Yeah, they have a banter going on.
Yeah, it's part of the deal. The last 3 or 4 albums we did from I think particularly after he had his solo success, I think the dynamic of the band was very even. I think it would be fair to say that when, the early days, yes, he was somehow also like that, and we kind of, I think Mike and I were quite happy for that to sort of be the way. So through things like, particularly then there were 3 stuff, we sort of dominated a bit, I think. But he sort of slowly started to sort of nudge up, and we couldn't stop him. So in the end, we just said, okay.
We have a great relationship like that. It's just the way it is, I mean, I'll have a hit or something. They'll say, yeah, there's only 3 chords in it, isn't there? I say, yeah, I'm learning a 4th and a 5th, So there's a great way of dismantling any kind of pomp that you might get.
You never
and
worry
that's
about
all
what
healthy.
you say to each other, us 3. Never worry about what I say to Phil or Tony, upsetting them, you know what I mean? It's not like that, you can't do that.
No.
There's no sort of edginess or...
People have said over the years, don't you get embarrassed by writing about your life? And that's what you're supposed to do, isn't it? I think you're supposed to be... I suppose you can be the poet that writes things like Paul Simon does, that's like hidden, and you have to go looking for it. Or you write about what the truth and what's happening to you, and that's where I tend to fall. At the time of me starting to do my little demos, it was... one thing I wanted to do, which it seemed very difficult for Genesis to do, because we always rehearsed and then recorded and then put the vocals on top, was that the vocals were always kind of struggling to be heard, which of course, I was now being more sensitive to being the singer as well. And so I made a point on these things that I was doing, of getting vocals down quite early and then putting things around that worked, so that it was kind of stark whenever possible. And those lyrics were In the Air Tonight, I literally found a sound I liked. I got a drum machine pattern that I liked, saw the meters moving, recorded a bit, and then I sang, and those lyrics came out spontaneously. They were improvised. But I've no idea what the song's about. And at the time, it was just another song that I was very proud of. Didn't know what to do with any of them. But it turned out that as we made the decision to make this a record, and I brought in some of my friends to play on my demos in the townhouse in Goldhawk Road, people would come down and I'd play them a couple of things. They'd say, what else have you got? And I'd play them, and then they were all like, my God, what the hell is this, you know? And I thought, I thought it was good, as like I thought the rest of the stuff was good, and then it was chosen by somebody else to be the first single, and then it kind of took off. And it's, you know, had this life. American footballers all over America warm up to it, you know. It's like, it's the most bizarre sort of life that you just don't know exists until someone tells you. I can feel it coming in the air tonight. It's an angry, bitter song. I mean, if you told me you were drowning, I would not lend a hand, probably. It's pretty obvious. Most of the lyrics, I'd say a good 80% of the lyrics to my songs, Phil Collins songs, as opposed to Genesis songs, or as opposed to Disney songs, are improvised. You know, the lyric, I sing lots of times. I just sing. Very rarely do I say, now, what am I going to write about? I just sing, and then I will write down what I've sung. So sometimes it's, obviously the mood of the music will affect the kind of things you write. That song had a lot of mystery and almost monotony in it, and the imagery was, you know, that stuff, the lyrics just came out. All that album was going from the breakdown of a family to beginning of finding sort of light at the end of the tunnel. I can see Ginger Mama. With Genesis, for instance, we always used to overdo things, and I think if we'd have been able to be in a studio and recording what we rehearsed as we wrote it, which is why something like Mama is so fresh, because it was recorded as we wrote it. If we'd have rehearsed it in a rehearsal studio and then come into a studio, it'd been more had been done to it. You know, it'd been overproduced and over-rehearsed and overplayed. So it's harder with a band to do that. Less is more to me, and I like to get away with as much as possible with as little as possible. So if I can avoid putting things on tracks, I will do that. There's never a band in the studio. You know, you bring someone into play and then you bring someone else into play. You're never all sitting there. You know, you actually add things that you feel will be like a little touch of this and a touch of that.
On I Wish It Would Rain, you have that choir sound. Is that a real choir?
Yeah. Yeah, we recorded the choir in Los Angeles, and I wanted a gospel choir, but unfortunately you don't think about things like this, but Lamont pointed it out to me. He said, if you get a church choir, they're going to be out of tune, out of time. It'll sound good in the church, but under scrutiny of a record, it probably wouldn't sound that great. So they got 9 singers that were church singers, but were also used to working in a studio, and we quadruple tracked them, so there's 36 of them there with different harmonies and things. It's a very emotional song. I mean, it's a kind of... I think everybody feels this when you meet an old girlfriend or something, or you meet your first girlfriend or someone that you've managed to forget about, and suddenly all these feelings start coming to the surface again, and it's like a can of worms. And the person in the song is saying, I really didn't mean to do that, I just meant to call by and say hi, you know. There's something very different for me. Eric Clapton plays guitar on it, and I just felt it was the closest song I've ever written to a blues, and so I got Eric to play on it. My first tour was in '83 with my own. That's the first time I'd ever been out on the road with my own band, touring with Hello I Must Be Going and Face Value. And during that tour, Phil Bailey, being an Earth, Wind and Fire member, and me using the horn section, he came down to the gig in LA and he loved the gig, and he said, will I produce his next album? He already just had an album out, so we had to wait till he was ready, and it was about '84 that he'd give me the call. He came over, and we recorded, and I was very proud of that album. I think it was a great album, and we ended up writing one of the last things we did was write for Easy Lover, me, Nathan East and Phil Bailey. And we recorded it. Once we'd finished writing it, we recorded it that night with the intention of just recording it so we wouldn't forget it. And the next day we came in with the intention of recording it properly, heard the version we'd done the night before, and said, well, that's it, we don't need to do it again. So the version that came out was actually a first take job, and it's got such a lot of energy on it, and I still think it's one of the best things I've been associated with. I like doing other people's songs, you know, and I kind of had this short list of Motown songs that I would like to have done. There was Nowhere to Run was one of them, Going to a Go-Go was another, and You Can't Hurry Love. I chose those songs because they were my favourite songs, and also songs that you remember when you hear them, but you don't often hear them on the radio. Anyway, that week I put that Going to a Go-Go up on the list. The Stones recorded it, so I quickly crossed that off. I couldn't do that. And You Can't Hurry Love, I kind of figured was one of my favourite songs when I was at school. And like I say, you don't hear that very often. You do now, of course. But I mean, then it was one of those songs you hear, oh, I remember that, I like that record, yes. But you always heard You Keep Me Hanging On or Reach Out, I'll Be There. But you never heard You Can't Hurry Love. So I thought I'd just have a crack at it. And I put Motown, We Salute You on the sleeve notes because of my love for the thing. I'd recorded separate lives for No Jacket Required because, as I say, I don't mind covering other people's songs. And Bishop had sent me this tape of an unreleased album of his, and we were good friends, me and Bishop, and I just thought it was such a great song. And I hadn't really written any songs like that on the No Jacket album, and I thought, well, I'd like to do this one. It didn't make the album because I had other songs that I wanted to put on. And Atlantic called me, Doug Morris, and said, I've got this new girl singer that I really want to record, and I'd like her to do a duet with you. So I said, well, male-female duets, you know, a bit dodgy ground, really. It's a bit something. Anyway, I sent him separate lives and said, this is a song that maybe could be a duet. And she liked it, and I met her, and she did have a lovely voice, and she was a very nice lady, Marilyn. So we did it. Arif Mardin, again, was called in to produce it. Everything he does seems very effortless. I think that's why he's such a great producer. You know, I mean, Against All Odds, Separate Lives, they were both records of his. They both went to #1, and they both were made themselves with apparently no effort. And I'm sure that's his ability as a producer. You have no right. At that time, we were using drum machine a lot, which freed me up to not playing the drums and to sing, you know, improvising singing as well as the guys improvising on instruments. And so I remember this and singing along to that. This line, this vocal, she seems to have an invisible touch. Not brain surgery, but it was catchy. It was catchy, and it became the bit of music and the lyric idea. Kind of, you know, it was pretty strong. I remember writing the lyrics to it from just that one line, you know, and sometimes, quite a lot of times actually, you know, those are the moments. Okay, that's what the lyric's going to be about. Well, I've been waiting. Yeah, I think you can skim over some things with up-tempo stuff. I mean, everything counts still, but you can skim over it. I mean, it all starts from when I put my hands on the keyboards and what kind of noise I'll make. I react to sound of the keyboard, and so something will take shape from what you're playing. Yeah, I mean, I would say there's more emotion that goes into the ballads because they're the ones that people tend to listen to the lyrics quite closely.
What about you dealing with other people's emotions? Were you good at that?
In what way, you mean?
Do you kind of have an empathy or an understanding for other people's feelings?
Oh, yeah, well, I think that other people tend to... people tend to react to what I've written because I'm writing as if it happened to them. I mean, a lot of the things that have happened to me are things that happen to everybody. And I write it in such a way that it's probably easier to understand. You don't have to dig too deep with me. If Leaving Me Is Easy actually was one of those things where it just hangs on 2 or 3 chords, and it's like a Isaac Hayes type thing. I remember Walk On By when he did that. It was just a hypnotic groove, you know.
And Against All Odds, Taylor Hackford the film director came to you for that.
Yeah, he got in touch and said, you know, I'd like you to write a song for this film I'm doing called Against All Odds. And he told me the story. We met in Chicago. I said, well, I've never written on the road because I need my security blanket of my sounds and my little studio. I mean, I'm not exactly a professional writer, you know. So he said, oh, that's a shame. I said, well, I got one song that I never used, actually, because I didn't actually think it was good enough for the first album. But I've got a song, and you're welcome to hear it. And if you think you like it, then I could rewrite some lyrics if you want it. And I sent him Against the Odds, which is what the song was originally called. And I did change some lyrics for him, but he was over the moon with it. That was my first, actually, #1 record in America. And so people, you know, it opened a lot of doors, obviously.
How can I just let you walk away? Just let you leave?
Both Sides and Face Value are both very dear to me. More dear to me than any other record I've made. And kind of for the same reasons, in a way. They're from the heart. They're much more home demo songs than any of the other albums, although all the other albums were based on home demos, the bulk of which, you know, that you hear on the record was all done at home. It's a small record. It was a very homemade record, and that's why I like it. I think it's small, compact.
Just as I thought I'd made it. Nothing else, you know what I mean.
So, Phil, as you look back over all the years, how would you kind of sum it all up?
No, I mean, it's been a fantastic journey, really.